Hello and welcome to the Trust and Influence in B2B podcast. I'm your host, Joel Harrison. As the title suggests, this podcast has a very broad remit covering all the evolving associated challenges with generating trust and influencing buyers in all areas of B2B. These are and have been perennially tough challenges, but they've taken on a new urgency and resonance in a very rapidly changing landscape. Lots of exciting things and kind of sometimes scary things going on in the background. So episodes are released weekly, so please don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. We'd love to get your feedback and get you signed up for the future and get you involved as one of our regular listeners or watchers indeed. So today my guest is Kate Mackie, who is partner at EY and author of the book B2B Marketing Essentials. Kate has more than 20 years experience leading global marketing initiatives, shaping brand strategy and mentoring emerging talent. She's a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing and a member of the Marketing Society and one of its 2023 most influential marketers. At EY, she leads global integrated go-to-market activity, connecting brand, technology, and commercial impact. Her work focuses on how trust, reputation, and relationship power growth in complex B2B organizations. In this conversation, we'll explore how these themes come to life in practice and how marketers can earn and sustain trust in an era of data, AI, and constant change. And in the session, what I hope you'll learn is why internal culture and advocacy are critical to external credibility, how data and AI can enhance or erode customer confidence, what leadership behaviours build psychological safety and trust in teams, and where marketers must focus to sustain trust in the decade ahead. So a lot to get through. Kate, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Very much appreciate being asked. And one of the things I will say before we jump in is I am also pushing my book, which is B2B Marketing Fundamentals, available from all good bookshops. And I actually did go and see it in Oxford Street Waterstones, which got me very excited. That was the anyway.
I imagine that must be a lovely moment when you see yourself on a shelf in that big Waterstones.
Yes, it was the highlight. I did kind of squeal and point it loudly at you kids, make them take iPhone pictures of me.
Well, very good. Well, I'm congratulations on getting that far, having someone who's started writing a book and then kind of thought better of it for different reasons. That's not this conversation now, but congratulations for you on finishing the whole thing. We talked a lot, and it's worth saying, I've described your partner, but you're CMO, right? I think that bit got lost in the introduction, right? So you're the marketing leader.
I lead. We have a global chief brand and marketing officer, which is John Radesky, who I work very closely with. But I lead all of the go-to-market piece. So I lead kind of marketing within that team and across into go-to-market as well. Okay,
apologies for that. So I forgot that misapprehension. So to kick us off, I wanted to you talked about all the responsibilities that you've got around go-to-market. And I wanted to ask you what do you do all day question, because there's a lot of stuff you said about that. But what does that look like in practice? What is your typical, there probably is no such thing as a typical day, but how much of your time is spent managing, mentoring, and doing actual marketing?
You're right. No 2 days are the same at all. And it's a complete kind of balance and juggle between strategic planning, market engagement, really talking to those teams that we lead across the globe, and also internal leadership around teams themselves as well. So kind of the mentoring and coaching of individuals. And I would say that, we have an annual kind of strategy and plan, which we set on an annual basis. So there's a lot of calibrating against that on a kind of daily, weekly, monthly basis, depending on what we're doing around the strategy and campaigns. So there's work around global narratives, really thinking through how do we drive those go-to-market priorities, working closely with our teams across the business to really make sure we're putting marketing's effort where it'll have the most impact. But then it's also about how do we influence upwards? How do we make sure that we are using the investments in marketing to really drive the right impact and priorities and making sure that people across the business kind of value marketing and understand where we can have that impact. But it's then also talking to the teams and making sure that we're enabling them. So I kind of see my job as really unblocking any challenges that the teams might have as they try and execute on their day-to-day. So that's through kind of coaching, mentoring, and really removing those barriers to execution, simplifying and ensuring that we're driving economies of scope and scale at the global level, because I sit in the global team and then support all of our regions and countries, so we can break bulk and make sure that the infrastructure is there, as well as the kind of global strategy that then gets rolled out.
Did you say influence and upfluence? Did I hear that correctly?
Influencing upwards.
Oh, okay. I thought upfluence is a great new word. I think we should coin that as a way to describe. Yeah. I think so. I quite liked it. It's amazing how often great things get kind of interpret, do it on the fly, don't they? Right? The language is added to sometimes by accident rather than by design. So,
we should talk
upfluence.
about upfluence. It's quite hard to say. Maybe that's the issue. I couldn't say upward, but it's upfluence. It's you need to make sure you're not saying anything else.
Okay, well, we'll consider that one. Whether we're going to kind of call the Oxford English Dictionary, see if we need to add that one in there for next year.
Dictionary corner.
But you've been agency side, you've been client side, you've been local, you've been global. How has that range kind of shaped your understanding of what drives influence in B2B marketing on all sides of the spectrum?
I think having a balance of both agency and client side is really important, and it's something that really shaped me and the way that I can kind of work through any of the issues, challenges that I have, because it really gives you, from an agency perspective, you have to have commercial rigor. You have to be able to tell a story and the impact on the other side of it. You have to really think about how what you're doing answers the problem that's put in front of you, and being really clear and clean in terms of what is that problem. So the brief is incredibly important, more so if you've had that agency side, I think. But then on the client side, you also see the impact of a good brief, and the kind of efficiency and impact that you can drive through that too. And then I think the global local roles really show me where we can influence B2B through different media channels, through different relevance, through different relationships, really thinking through how you can drive trust from both a relationship perspective internally, from a client side perspective, but also then from an agency. If you're in that relationship, how are you deepening that relationship? How are you enabling those conversations? And I think a lot of our B2B professional services industry function in a very similar way to an agency. So it really gives you that kind of matrixed leadership style and ability to kind of work with stakeholders that have many different priorities that you're having to kind of look across and really work out how you deliver the best impact as you move forward on your day-to-day.
I mean, understanding all sides of the environment and the different people and walking in people's shoes, it's a cliche, but it's very, very powerful, isn't it? And I think the B2B marketers who've been both agency side and client side, I think have got an advantage in so many ways because of understanding that dynamic and what it looks like perhaps I'm decoding some of the messages you might get from the other side.
But I would also say that I started in B2C and then moved into B2B and did kind of combinations of all of them throughout my career. And I think the overlap between agency and client side is as equal to, if not, kind of less important than the kind of B2B, B2C interaction as well. Because I think there's so much we can learn from both sides, and they're obviously different. There are different buyers, there are different buying cycles, all that sort of known kind of difference. But I think that the piece that we always need to come back to is that we're selling to people, and those people buy products at home or they buy services and products at work. And, that whole thing has to be thought about in a connected way about the individual and about the human interaction. And that's true of being agency or client side as well. Okay, great. Well, that's a very powerful point.
So I want to talk about your book, and let's if you can share it with us again. I mean, one thing we haven't asked about is that you've talked about. I want to ask you about the kind of the four pillars of it, but just kind of go step back a step. What moved you to write a book? Because presumably you've got quite a busy day job, right? As discussed, there's a lot of things on your plate, and it's not an insignificant exercise. So what was it that thought, what I really need to do is to add to my my responsibility by writing a book?
I'm a terrible people pleaser, and I was asked to do it. So it was one of those points that the publisher reached out to me. So Kogan Page, the editor that I work with, reached out to me and said, we've seen some of your stuff on LinkedIn. We think you've got opinions you might be able to expand on. Would you put a proposal together? And I thought, you know what, I will. So I had a go, and didn't really expect it to go anywhere. And it did. And it was one of those kind of stones that kept gathering moss as it rolled forwards. And then I distinctly remember sitting in the car with my daughter about to take her to football practice. She plays a lot of football or soccer if you're in the US. And she said to me, I was kind of deliberating as to whether or not I should sign a contract, because the whole kind of reason I finished it was because I had to. I'd signed a contract to say this is what I was going to deliver and this was when and all that sort of good stuff. And so it was the kind of pre-signing piece and panic that I really went through it with my daughter. And she said, well, Mum, you have enough time to watch TV. I'm sure you've got enough time to write a book. And so it was at that point that I really couldn't say no. I couldn't kind of, I couldn't put TV over writing a book. And, and her kind of secondary point was, can you imagine what it would look like to have your name on the spine? It would be cool. And And yeah, can't really deny that. So it was something that once I'd got into it, I then realised, how many words I committed to, the delivery date that I committed to, and then how many words I must write on a daily basis to get to that outcome. And so I ended up writing 511 words a day, no more, no less. And it was a commitment of I will write 511, even if I finish on and, even if I'm kind of writing a few kind of extra words at the end just to get to that number. And then go back and edit the previous days and continue on with the next. And that took me about 90 minutes a day, which just meant that, yes, I watched less TV and I also had less sleep.
I think that's beautifully simple. And I think perhaps everybody needs, I'm not sure how old your daughter is, but really needs
She's 9 at the time. Yeah, 9 at the time.
Perhaps there are way more 9-year-old coaches in B2B marketing just to boil things down to really brutally simple perspectives. So I really like that. But within the book, you talk about 4 pillars of effective B2B marketing: brand, reputation, relationships, and revenue. How does trust connect those pillars? And is it something that emerges as a result, or something marketers have to design in from the start?
I think that you have to design trust in from the start as a principle. So it becomes the glue that kind of interconnects all of those pieces together, because you have to be trusted as a brand to be able to drive the reputation, to be able to enable or embed relationships, and then the outcome of that is revenue as an impact. So I think personally, trust has never been more important within B2B marketing, and it's also an absolute foundation to anything that you're doing. You have to think about it. How are you driving trust? What's the promise that you're giving to the buyer? What is it that you have as your value proposition that differentiates against the competition? And how does the end buyer or user consume that? How does that manifest? And what is it? And I just think, you have to define what that means for you, and therefore what your principles are, what your purpose is, and then just follow all of that through. So to me, trust is huge.
Okay. And you've also written that consistency and reliability are the foundations of lasting relationships in B2B. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis inside an organisation like EY?
I mean, consistency and reliability is always about showing up when you said you would, with what you said you would, and delivering to time and to budget. So I think, really ensuring that whether you are working as in an agency world, in a professional services land, or just as any kind of product owner, your product needs to live up to the promise that it's given. And that trust is built through consistency and reliability. I know that this product delivers because it has done, because the impact is there, because the stories are told, because the use cases prove it. So I think being able to enable that internally means that you have clear processes, strong governance and accountability, because it means that we're all advocates within that kind of brand trust. We all have to deliver on the promises that are made to our customers every day.
And I'm glad you mentioned brand, because that segues very nicely into my next question, which was, we're seeing a lot of discussion about brand in B2B over the last few years. And I think it's fair to say it's kind of back in fashion. Whether everybody out of fashion is a question you could ask, but there's a lot of debate around whether brand is the be all end all, or the role and relevance of demand strategies within that. And we haven't got time to get into that now, but we'd be here all day. But you've certainly argued that the brand is central to building credibility. What's the biggest misconception about brand's role in creating confidence and trust amongst buyers?
I think the biggest myth is that it's fluffy, or that it is, decoration. It's absolutely core to everything that you're doing. It's a risk mitigator. It's a growth accelerator. If we take it back to, a pure product, having a brand on that product proves the trust. It's a shortcut to the trust and the promise that you've made to the customer or the client in terms of what you will get from that brand. And I think, and what you will get from that product and service that has that brand icon on it. And I think that I get really frustrated when people say brand is in and out of fashion, because what on earth are you selling if you're not a brand? There isn't anything. If you're and taking it back to things that people understand, think about plimsolls, black plimsoll on its own for a tenner, black plimsoll with a logo on, with a tick on, with stripes on, or whatever it might be. Suddenly you've tripled the price. The value is integral to the brand that the halo that you put on that product, and it expands into B2B as well. So if you start to think about, there are many vanilla Me Too type offerings across the board. But what you get when you brand something is a promise that the trust will be driven through the service or the product that you have, in the way that brand has been associated with particular competence, confidence, and a reduced perceived risk for buyers. So there's plenty of kind of adages of no one gets fired for buying specific brands, and it's because trust is ever more important, and fear, the opposite of trust, is even more important in B2B. So I think, in B2B, if you're spending a ton of money on a particular service or a particular product, maybe you're changing your ERP system, maybe it's a huge engagement that you're investing in, or a product that's going to be multi-year and make or break careers, the fear of making the wrong decision is huge. So trust has to be integral to that decision, more so than buying toothpaste. You don't you trust that toothpaste of any brand will clean your teeth because that's the product category. That's kind of the foundational level. Whereas, do you trust that provider will deliver the service, product, or solution that you need at the time that you need it, when you've got so much weight kind of bearing on it, whether that is you individually or your business, and more broadly. So trust and brand are hand in glove, and a brand is that risk mitigator and growth accelerator because of the trust that is within an innate brand experience.
I completely agree. The brand is fundamental in everything in B2B marketing. I think one of the things that kind of my caveat is, often people talk about brand as a kind of shortcut for advertising, and advertising is a great mechanism for communicating a brand. But my perspective is, brand is a sum total of all the engagements, interactions you have, all the people, all the touch points, all the events, all those things you do. So it isn't just about that. It's about everything, and there are various mechanisms to communicate that. I love the point around the kind of that value. Sorry, go on, Kate. Sorry.
I was going to say, was it Steve Jobs or somebody? Anyway, it's accredited to somebody who says that a brand is what is said about you when you're not in the room, which includes your reputation and includes the relationships and the depth and the trust and all of those other things around it.
So I think that what's fascinating, to pick up your point around the resonance of brand and B2B versus B2C. I was a brilliant study by Google and Matista about 20 years ago now, which really demonstrated the comparison between emotional resonance of B2B brands and B2C ones. And I was staggered at the time to see how much more emotionally resonant, emotionally connected B2B brands were than B2C ones. And if you think about it for a second, it's not surprising if your local pharmacy or your local chain store pharmacy doesn't have your brand of shower gel. It's annoying. You can get it somewhere else. If somebody you have a major software relationship with, which is potentially 6-figure, 7-figure sum, and they mess up, well, that you could lose your job, your business could go under. So that's a massively traumatic experience. So no wonder B2B brands have this. B2B brands and their buyers and their users have a deep emotional connection because they have to.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, completely.
Okay.
And also the buying group is so much bigger. So you might have to, to influence your family around the shower gel that you buy. There might be a preference that you have personally. But when you start to think about the trust that's needed around the buyer group within B2B, it's not just the direct buyer, the direct user, it's the influencers. So that brand has to have much bigger kind of mental availability. There has to be a bigger net. And so I do, and that's why I worry about really focusing on the demand end of marketing purely for B2B, and it seems to be one of those cases that we are thankfully moving out, even back up into broadening the aperture around brand, because we have to have that mental availability to be able to have influencers that aren't necessarily within the direct buying group understand what you do and why.
So reputation, you say, starts on the inside. What have you seen work best for aligning internal culture and employee advocacy with the external promises that a brand makes?
I think it's hugely key to involve all of your employees as brand advocates as you move forward, because they have to feel the brand promise to be able to deliver it and amplify it externally. And for them, an employee advocacy program, really driving that values-led culture and thinking about how you have leadership visibility that brings that to life, bringing the strategy to the shop floor, for instance. So if you're working in a factory-based environment and your CEO and your kind of delivery drivers have the same kind of experience and understanding of the brand and can then for influence all of those buyers at every touch point, that helps your brand feel authentic, feel credible, and feel like it is actually something that is really at the core of your brand as a whole. So I think reputation absolutely starts inside, and it starts with every single person who represents that brand and represents that brand within a customer or client kind of experience.
And you're in a particularly EY's, given the nature of your business, you have, your people are your brand in many ways in terms of how they're working directly with clients and immersed in the organizations themselves. So I guess there's a pressure on you guys to be exemplars of that.
Absolutely. And that comes also through thought leadership as well. So really enabling our teams to have the right insights, to make sure that they're having the right conversations, and that they are, we're humanizing the expertise that then comes into those relationships, so that, when we're selling service and knowledge, it's not only based on the individuals themselves, but it's based on the power of the data that we have within EY, and the understanding of not only our full spectrum of services, but also the industry models that we have, the industry depth of their experience, and all of the impact that we can drive and help our teams drive.
I must say, Kate, you're doing a brilliant job of preempting my question, which is fabulous. But the kind of second part of what I was going to ask around the issue of thought leadership is: do you think that credibility is shifting, perhaps from the central mothership corporate brand to individual experts and even kind of downstream employees?
I think it's a difficult one, because I think credibility has to be a backbone to the brand, to the organization, but it also, or maybe it's more like a trunk of a tree, actually. So you've got the trunk of the tree, which is the credibility of the kind of the global or corporate brand. But because our branches are so wide and our leaves are so kind of out there, you absolutely have to really think about how you're enabling those individuals within that kind of value-based organization and within the culture to be their own authentic selves and take that expertise to market in a human way. And I think, therefore, credibility is shifting towards individual experts, but corporate brands provide you with that infrastructure, provide you with that platform and scale, so that you have kind of a shortcut as to why you should listen to that individual. And I think that trust of an individual talking within that kind of corporate brand gives you a bit more resonance, a bit more credibility, and probably a bit more of an audience.
So it's both. It's not either or. It's both, and it's 1 and 1 equals 3 rather than 1 or 1. Yeah.
You've absolutely got to. I mean, if you think, a person's credibility CV helps drive that authenticity as well, and helps you understand why you should listen to them, or why they might have an opinion that might be relevant to you.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So we're going to shift gear a little bit now and talk about technology, data and AI and the kind of the whole notion of trust in the digital age. You've highlighted that AI and connected data as game changers in marketing insight. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about that at the moment. It's a really exciting emerging area. How can marketers, what would you recommend to marketers using these tools to strengthen rather than erode trust with customers and colleagues? Because there is a potential danger of being, there are lots of challenges you could fall into around this, right?
Yeah, no, there absolutely are. And some of the things that we're doing internally, so we have EY.ai, which is bringing platforms, process and people together, because we recognise that not one of them can do it on their own. There absolutely has to be a fully kind of involved transformation that pulls people, process and tech together, because transparency is absolutely key. To enable trust within the world of AI, we have to show how AI is informing decisions, where you're using AI, where AI has been influential within some of those decisions, and not replace humans with that, but keep those humans in the loop, make sure there is human oversight, and that AI is used where it takes out the mundane, or it takes out the repeatable, or it enables efficient use of creative. So really thinking through how you can use it within the kind of human oversight perspective, so that you're still keeping that humanization, the humanized brand that layers over the top. And also you have the check in place to make sure that you're absolutely utilizing AI in the way that is right and relevant for your audience. And I think some of the ways that we've been really thinking about really driving kind of trust using AI and using data is showing how those data-driven insights really improve the relationship and improve the relevance of what we're giving to people and what we're recommending to people. So showing how the data is enabling the conversation that we take forward.
Okay, there's that. The transparency is really informative in this situation. So, just in a time, I want to talk about more leadership and culture and psychological safety. I mean, one of the things that you've talked about in the past is embracing risk and imperfection as part of leadership. Which is feels like a very nuanced kind of 2025 where to look at things. How would you advise marketing leaders to create that psychological trace safety and trust that lets teams experiment without fear of failure? Because that's a major challenge in marketing, right? People want to get it right and want to be proven and shown to be successful. So how do you remove that fear?
I think it's about how you model it from the top, and giving people permission to fail and test, so that you fail fast, you fail forward, and you learn from it, and it's an open conversation. In my previous roles at GE, we used to celebrate failure. So it used to be one of those conversations where we would, what have you failed on this week? And I remember there being an internal comms piece where people celebrated their absolute failures and what have you learned from that? Because I think the only way that you absolutely learn is through that first attempt in learning, which is an acronym for FAIL. That my son, who is 9 now, taught me about, because that's something he's been told at school. And I think we need to embrace that first attempt in learning and really talk about it. Because if we are in a world of innovation, a lot of things will be going out in beta. And a lot of things we'll be learning as we go, and we'll be learning in the new world together. And I think some of that is about how do we create that vulnerability and reward the learning, not just success. So how do we reward kind of the journey, not just the outcome? And so we absolutely are looking at that from a team perspective and making sure that our teams feel that they have psychological safety. Our current strategy, our strategy at the moment is all in together, or together all in. And that is together all in to shape the future with confidence. So for us, it's about how do we really drive that relationship forward, and how do we make sure that we're all on the bus and going in the right direction. And so I absolutely adhere to the kind of how are you making sure you're authentic, how are you really building that trust with your teams, listening as much as speaking, if not more so, 2 ears, 1 mouth, do it in that order, or that percentage. And then really thinking about how we drive a consistency of showing up and making sure that people know that you're there for them and know that you're there to absolutely help them overcome any of the challenges that they have. Because actually, as a team leader, you're really there to serve the business through your leadership, which means that the teams are on that journey with you.
And that sounds fantastic, and a very candid approach to it, and really inclusive, and seeing the bigger picture here. I guess what's interesting, it's a conversation I feel like I've had a lot over the years, but what we don't often explore in this is, what does the alternative look like? And the alternative basically, presumably, and I guess this is a reality for many organizations where they are under huge pressure to grow, and marketing is regarded with some significant skepticism. And if you're in a situation whereby you're not giving marketing a chance to fail, then you're castigating them for everything they get wrong. And it doesn't sound like a very healthy environment to be in, and it sounds like marketing is up against it the whole time. So, but I guess inevitably that's going to be the situation in some organizations. What the result for me probably is going to be quite predictable, samey, safe marketing. Is that fair?
I would say it probably is, because I think if you have to expand the conversation, which is, marketing is part art, part science. It's not just the science, and the science piece is absolutely measurable. And we can all talk about the measurability, talk about how we drive the right impact, the right ROI, the right revenue opportunity. But the only way you make leaps is to be creative, and the only way that you make real change and innovate is to be creative and to really think about how you might do things differently. And so I think you have to really plan for innovation, and plan for innovation within your budget. So whether that is testing and learning on a small scale with things like your, email subject line testing, A/B testing, and using targeting on site, retargeting of ads, all of those things are about optimization, which is just another way of saying I failed and I learned. So, we're optimizing rather than failing. And I think there's just a way of nuancing some of the language, which then can help you tell the story internally, which is not that, marketing has failed to deliver. It's marketing is optimizing and continuing to optimize. And the learning through that optimization will help you have ever better results. So I think it's about accepting that marketing is an absolute art and science, and that art is not 100% perfect all of the time.
And we're communicating, we're influencing to those individuals that might have to be skeptical about whether marketing is succeeding all the time. So I read a wonderful quote from you, which is, "I don't really have a plan. I use a filter. Does this add to my story? Does it help me? Is the culture good?" How does this personal filter that you have, I love this quote, by the way, how does that relate to building or maintaining trust, both for yourself and your teams?
So the context of that quote, I don't really have a plan, I have a filter, is when you look at your CV and you think about opportunities that that might be rearing their heads in front of you. How do you make a choice? How do you decide where you want to go, where you want to stay, what you might do next? And it's all about, for me, I've never had a kind of career plan and trajectory. It's much more, I know the direction that I want to go, and I know that I need to maintain curiosity. I need to stay interested. And so as I look at any of the new opportunities that come my way, it's always about whether or not that will add to the story, add to the narrative, because something I was told really early on in my career is that you work for your CV, not for the individual in front of you, because ultimately it's about what's next or what that opportunity might enable you to do next. And therefore, it's about continual growth and really learning how you're driving forward personally and also professionally. And so I think that all comes together with having some kind of clarity around what it is that drives you and what that might be in terms of a filter for opportunities that come your way.
So that segues beautifully to the next question, which I was going to ask, which is around the fact that you mentor early career marketers and you lecture at Cambridge University. What's the single most important behaviour or habit you encourage in young marketers who want to become trusted professionals?
Well, I think it goes back to curiosity. I think it's absolutely about you asking questions, seeking feedback, but also underpinning it with delivery and making sure that you're executing reliably on anything that you've promised. So you build trust by doing what you say you'll do every single time, and really enabling those relationships and enabling that career through listening, through curiosity and consistency.
So Kate, finally, it's been great talking to you. Looking ahead, expectations are changing. B2B marketing, in my opinion, is changing in a way it never has before in the 22 years I've been involved with it. You've got AI coming in and shrinking attention spans and all kinds of dynamics going on here. What do you think trust is going to look like in B2B marketing in the future, and what must we protect and what must we reinvent?
So I think trust is huge over the next kind of 5 to 10 years, but I do think it'll be dynamic and data driven because people will have so much information at their fingertips that the foundations will rise, and so therefore human judgment becomes even more critical. And impact stories, case studies, kind of real recommendations from other users in your user group will probably end up being even more critical. And I think we absolutely have to protect the ethics around AI, around data, around the usage of them, making sure that we have transparency. We really know when it's being used, know how it's being used, and also then ensure that we have empathy. Because I think one of the things that we can get really, we can lose quite quickly when we start to get into something that's so much more technical is that humanity. And I think really focusing on how human judgment and human empathy maintains a difference is something we absolutely have to protect. And I think from a reinvention perspective, really signaling credibility in an AI-driven world where there is that shorter attention span has to be through kind of whether it's moments or micro moments of value that are delivered by the brand to the individual customer or client. So what is it that you're able to do, and how are you, I suppose to coin our phrase, together all in, shaping that future with confidence and ensuring that you are absolutely looking at the future that you're reimagining together.
Okay, fantastic, Kate. I really loved your really thoughtful answers and your kind of focused on trust and your candidness around all these things, challenges that you're seeing. So thank you so much for being our guest today. Just remind us one more time about your book. Have you got it to hand again to show us?
I have. Here it is. This is from Kogan Page. If you buy it from the Kogan Page website, there is a discount. Otherwise, it's available at all good bookshops.
Unless Kate and her daughter has bought all copies in the particular branch you're gone to, but that's quite
and
possible.
And do push me out the way if I'm there. If I'm standing kind of excitedly next to it, I'll find it for you.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. Really, really fascinating talking to you. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and there's plenty more podcasts like this on the same theme of trust and B2B marketing on the Trust and Influence of B2B podcast. So please, if you've listened, if you liked it, please like, please rate, please subscribe, please share it. We'd love to share the message about this podcast. So that's all from me and from Kate for today. So thanks for listening, and bye, and hope you can join us again very, very soon.